Boom, and we are live. The Muay Thai guys are back. We are back for a very exciting podcast, number 95 today. We're creeping up on 100. We're going to have to celebrate somehow, do some kind of giveaway, have some fun with it because, man, we've come a long way. And today we have a really exciting guest straight from the Primed Mind app. We have Elliot, and I'm super excited for this one because I think it will relate to the fighters that listen to podcasts, but also the people from the general population, those that are looking to gain more confidence, those that are looking to just be more focused, whatever it is, whether it's business, even poker. Sean has a rather crazy story that he can probably relate to you. This whole Muay Thai journey actually started with poker. But before we get to any of that, why don't you introduce yourself and kind of tell us a little bit more about how you came about, how this idea came about, but more so just your upbringing and how you got to where you are today.
Okay, so my name's Elliot Roe. I'm a mindset coach and a hypnotherapist, and I've been doing that since 2010. My initial story getting into it is a bit odd. I actually had a fear of flying, and one of my friends recommended a hypnotherapist, and I thought, hey, that couldn't possibly work. Went to the hypnotherapist, and she cured me in an hour, and it just blew my mind completely, and I went from refusing to go on long-haul flights to flying around the world with no issues. And I was basically like, I have to learn this because it's changed my life. So I learned it not thinking I'd go into hypnotherapy, just thinking it would be interesting. And so got qualified, started seeing clients, started working with some golfers, and their scores improved quite a lot. And then one of my friends was working in the poker industry, and she said, hey, if it's working for golfers, why don't you try this with poker players? And started working with them in 2011, and it went boom, basically. The guys made an awful lot more money. I had guys win, I think almost every major tournament I've had players win over the last few years. So like the main event, nearly all of the high rollers. So it's like $50 million in the last 3 years I've had clients win in poker. And then alongside the poker, we moved to Las Vegas. And I had a background in MMA from a long time ago when I was younger and fitter. And I went to the MMA gyms, and one of them I went to was Drysdale's. And I just went in and said, hey, I'm a mindset coach. I'm interested in working with fighters. Can I do a seminar? And I just did a talk for them, started working with fighters. That was probably 2012, I think. And then ended up working with fighters from Drysdale's, started working with Dwayne Ludwig. He introduced me to people as well. And then over the years, I've worked with quite a few MMA fighters, some kickboxers, some Brazilian jiu-jitsu guys. So there's like the second side that's closer to what you guys cover, basically as well, to my business. And then, so things went well in the poker. And one of the guys who I'd been working with spoke about making an app so we could help more people. So we created this app, Prime Mind, which you can download and do these focus sessions to help you improve your performance in sport or confidence or communication. And I brought on some people to help me who I'd worked with in the past. So his name's Fedor Holtz. He's one of the top poker players in the world. He did the poker side, and Dwayne Ludwig helped me write some of the martial arts content. And then I had a guy called Nate, who's a big Counter-Strike player, help with some of the esports content on there. And then we sort of had some other people help with things like trading and things like that. So that's basically a bit of background from me and sort of where we're at with those things.
Wow, man, you got quite a wide spectrum of people that you need to be going after. But it's really interesting because how it all kind of correlates under one umbrella of the mental side of whatever it is that we're doing. And like Paul said, it's funny that you started with poker because that's where my whole journey started, because I ended up actually winning an online poker tournament for about like 10 or 15 grand. And that gave me the the freedom to travel to Thailand and pursue my martial arts.
Oh man,
career.
that's awesome.
And that's like what led to everything. And then, funny enough, I ended up training with Wayne Ludwig a couple of years ago, and he mentioned the Prime Mind app through his Instagram, and that's what got me following you as well. I started using it, and I used it for a poker tournament, and I ended up winning $2,000 on the poker tournament after the first time using it. So there goes some more plug for the app right there. And then on another level, it really is. And then on another level, there was a maximize your training primer that I used before one of my training sessions, and dude, I was fucking people up. I was like in the Matrix. It was like so much fun. Matrix. And ever since like I won that poker tournament, and then I felt like in the zone doing sparring, and I was like, yo, this is like on to something, and kind of just really shows you how unlocking your mind can really lead to so much more. So I guess going off of that, when you made the transition to martial arts, was there anything noticeably different that you had to go from like poker and video games to the physical arena?
Well, I mean, there's definitely, with the martial arts, as I say, I had a bit of a background anyway. So it was quite natural for me to work with martial artists. And the issues are almost identical, which I found really interesting. It doesn't seem to matter whether I'm working with CEOs of a business or a UFC fighter or poker player. Almost all of it is sort of working through things like self-sabotage and anxiety, understanding where the problems are, and then freeing the person up from themselves to just do the thing that they know how to do. You know, everyone in fights, you know, if you're training professionally, you know how you're supposed to be fighting. The problem is everyone gets in their own way, and most people don't fight anywhere like the same level in the cage or the ring as they can do in sparring. And the work that I'm doing is, okay, well, we know that you can do this in sparring. We know you can do these techniques in the gym. Why isn't it happening in the ring? And then understanding the background reason as to, is there insecurity? Is there self-sabotage? Is there a fear of success, a fear of failure? Working through those things so they're just left with a clear mind to do what they're actually trained to do and they know how to do.
It was really nice to go through the primers that are the focus on fight day and the compete strong. Those were the two that I went through. I recently fought at Madison Square Garden on 6 days notice. And Glory Kickboxing on top of that, UFC Fight Pass. I only had 6 professional fights at the time. I was fighting a guy that had 70 something. He was like 66-6. So he had more losses than I had total pro fights. Yeah. So
and how did you get on
a lot of things? Sean introduced me to it. He was actually in my corner, and the week of the fight, there was a possibility that the fight's going to happen. And honestly, I've been working a lot on my mind as it is and trying to focus on meditation. And I definitely saw the difference in how I can reset my day. I'm someone that I probably have like undiagnosed ADD because but maybe it's just that I'm big on thinking and trying to be creative, because my mind is always just going from one thing to the next. I'm always in need of changing environment. So I'm going from one cafe to the next cafe to the next cafe to just keep stimulating my mind. Yeah. And it just never stops. So using meditation, just regular plain meditation, actually helped me out to reset myself and set one focus versus my mind being in 6 different places, because I do focus on fighting. I do focus on training my clients. I do focus on writing. I do have a million different ideas of what I want to come up with, whether it be products, how I want to train tomorrow, maybe how I want to train my training up, change my training up today, or my clients training up and things like that. So this kind of regular meditation would categorize everything for me, kind of sort it out and give me a reset button, especially when I just would be overwhelmed with what should I do first. Anytime I meditate, I feel like it's just a reset button for me. So, but one thing it would be missing, let's say I would go into fights and you always feel different. And I've only learned to really go with the flow. So if I feel like I'm excited, then I let that be. If I feel like I'm kind of pissed off to win, I let that roll out if I feel like I'm understimulated. Usually I know that I'll probably have better cardio that day because I know that
you're not burning,
I
you're not
don't
wasting
care that
energy.
much. I don't waste any energy being aggressive or anything like that. But a lot of the times that can get you, like, let's say, caught early on. Then there are those days that there is no feeling and there's just a state of flow. I definitely felt that when I fought for Glory in December. I mean, I got caught by one flash knockdown within the fight with like 5 seconds left in the round, and that's the one time I got excited because I ended up catching a knee and splitting his face open right above his eye, and I wanted to finish, so I wanted to land another one, and I was kind of forcing it, and I just tried too hard. But besides that, I was backstage. I dislocated my knee, which actually tore my meniscus in 2 places, partial tears, and my vastus lateralis, the top of the quad, also got pulled. So my leg was pretty messed up, and that was before they announced my name. So I was standing behind the curtain, and I was just moving my hips around, and I was sitting on my knee, trying to open up my hips, and I like kind of did this kind of like lunging back and forth, and then when I like shook, it just snapped. It just felt like a glass inside my knee broke, like, you know, shattered, and I kicked it out. And also backstage, I caught my foot on Sean's elbow, so I had like a hematoma that actually ended up looking like a blood boil. It was like skinnier at the bottom and fatter at the top. It looked like blood was like filling up in this like boil, and I think it was a combination of me just going through the mental exercises and just knowing it doesn't matter what happens, to just staying in the present moment and taking control of what I control, and not worrying about things that are out of my control. Like, this just happened. You know, there's nothing I can do about it. All I can do is, all right, you know, one of my trainers shoved a piece of like ice straight on top of it. It was insanely painful, but I just kind of sat there and wrote it out, and I feel like it numbed me to the fight. So once I got in the fight, I was just completely zoned in. I was focused because, like, what else can go wrong? kind of deal.
You've had all your bad luck already.
Yeah, but it was a nice combination because, like I said, the meditation was good to like categorize things when there's too many different thoughts going through. But on fight day, let's say you're understimulated, it's a good way of keeping you stimulated but focused on the right things, so that your mind, like what you said, is like from self-sabotage, the different thoughts that don't actually help you with your performance, you know, like thinking about, you know, being nervous or hesitant, you know, all it does is delay your reaction. So being confident in everything you do, but not overly so that you're making mistakes, but just letting the flow come out. It being sport specific, I felt like it got me in that flow zone because it created the visual of what's happening versus, you know, going through meditation and I'm kind of trying to create my own thing while someone is telling me something else. It's really tough to do. So having that sport specific thing was really really interesting.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that's sort of different about what we're trying to produce with the app. So rather than traditional meditation, you're obviously going to clear your mind completely and then typically focus on your breathing and let go of the thoughts that are coming through. With this, you're looking to reach the same state, so the same level of relaxation or trance or whatever you want to call it, but then instead of clearing your mind completely, we want to focus you in entirely on the activity that you're going to be doing that day. So in your case, it's for the kickboxing, but for someone else's, it might be the poker, it might be for an exam, you know, whatever it is, we want to have something there. So you've got a job interview, so you listen to like the prime yourself for the job interview before you go in, so you feel that confidence that you can be yourself. Or as you said, like the sport specific stuff.
Yeah, it's interesting because I've listened to a variety of the primers because I noticed that they kind of correlate to various areas of my life. And one thing I noticed is that there's all a type of system to the way that you're priming our minds, because there's like a formula in a way.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that formula and why it's so important to have it in that type of
sort of in the order that we do it? Yeah, so effectively it's an induction, which is like a body scan typically, so a traditional meditation body scan where you're looking to focus on different areas of your body and then release the tension that's stored there. So anyone who's done more traditional meditations will be used to that. Then there's a deepening section, which is usually where you're using your mind to then take you from that relaxed state to an even deeper relaxed state. So it'll be counting down, walking downstairs, visualizing, whatever it might be, just something taking you to that next level of trance state or deeper state or meditative state, however you want to describe it. And then we go into the content stage once your subconscious is sort of activated that way. So we're reaching a stage of quieting the conscious mind, making the subconscious more dominant, and then showing the subconscious what it needs for that day to basically get into that zone. And then the final section of each of those MP3s will be specific to the task that you're looking to fulfill.
When you were working with Dwayne and going through that whole process, did you get to experience any of the fighters that were there and kind of have them share their thoughts with you and then use those examples and use as information?
Yeah, I've probably worked with 20 to 30 professional fighters over the years. So a lot of this is the back and forth that I've had with those fighters over the sessions we've done and getting an idea of what fighters need. Like, one of the key things that I always mention in sessions I do with fighters, and I believe it's in the MP3s as well, is sort of the reducing the stress of the walk to the ring. Because there's a lot of people where it can be mentally exhausting, the waiting backstage and then the actual walkout itself. So that's something that maybe I wouldn't have been aware of if I hadn't been speaking to the fighters about that. But that's definitely something that came up in a lot of fighters mentioned it, that the most stressful part isn't the fight starting, it's just getting to the ring or the cage itself. So we focus quite heavily on that in there. And then sort of with Dwayne, what I did is I spoke to him about what he would want his fighters to hear, what he wanted to hear when he was a fighter, what are the important things to make sure that we're covering in these MP3s, what do you want your guys to hear before they go training and sparring, what do you want them to hear before they step into the cage or onto the mats. And we focused around creating the best possible environment for that within the MP3.
Who have you been able to work with within the last few years?
So over the last few years, sort of different clients work with me at different times, but I've worked with, I worked with TJ Dillashaw for the Joe Soto fight that he did. I've worked with Carla Esparra over her title run. I've worked with Robert Drysdale. I've worked with Dwayne. Worked with Danny Castillo. I worked with, I'm forgetting, I'm trying to remember who's given me testimonials because James McSweeney, he actually fought about 2 weeks ago in a kickboxing event. That went well. That was in Turkey. I was working with him for that event. That was the most recent one. So it's sort of a decent number of fighters over the years. And there's others as well who, so if they haven't given me testimonials, I can't mention them. So.
Do you think, as you've been involved in the sport for a little while now? I know you said you got into like 2012 is when was that? That was when you got involved with the martial arts side of the.
Okay, so that's when I, in terms of with the mindset coaching,
okay.
that's when I started working in MMA. But in terms of fighting amateur and things like that, that was like 2000. I was involved in MMA a long time ago, sort of before it was popular.
Okay, so you've been involved with it for quite a while then.
Yeah, so whatever that is now, like scarily, it's 18 years.
18 years. Yeah. So throughout those 18 years, were there, you talked about the walk to the cage, but were there any other main roadblocks or mental blocks that you saw just as a common reoccurrence throughout whatever sport it may be?
I think self-sabotage is the biggest roadblock. So a lack of confidence, and then people truly believing that they deserve the success, and listening to the voices in their mind telling them that they're going to get hurt, this person's a monster, I don't deserve to be here, all of the things they may have heard from friends and family around, this is a stupid career to do, why are you doing this, you're never going to succeed, and people taking on that negative self-talk and then turning it into a reality by not having that success that they could potentially be having. So we'd see that with different fighters in different ways, but Certainly level of stress the week of the fight, people's cardio burning out when clearly their cardio shouldn't be burning out in fights because of the level of stress they have. So, we watch a fight and it's 15 minutes long and the guys are exhausted, and we know that those same guys are doing like hour-long sparring sessions. So there's something going on there that doesn't make much sense. It's no different. You're still fighting the same quality of opponent. Yes, there might be a little bit less malice in the punches that you're throwing or taking, but the reality is, I believe a lot of especially in 15-minute fights, a lot of the exhaustion is psychological exhaustion rather than necessarily actual physical exhaustion, because the people who are fighting are far fitter than a 15-minute fight. What are your guys' thoughts on that? Is that something that you could see as well?
Yeah, I think a lot of it comes down to self-awareness and being able to be in control of your breathing and of your mind and of your entire aura around you. Because if you are tensed up or if you're overthinking things, that's when you could burn a lot of excess energy. So yeah, I've been a big believer in the mental aspect of training, and I know Paul's probably thinks very similar.
Yeah. Whenever I would go into fights that I felt like I should win and I was really confident in, I felt like it was like a sparring session, and I never really felt like I got very tired. And then when it was those fights where I think perhaps I have to really push it and make it a war, psychologically, I feel like, even like looking at your face, I feel like I'm squeezing my face, when I'm trying to go hard, let's say. But obviously you can do things. Yeah, everything is tense, which makes you really tired. And something as small as that, I try to tell my clients the same thing, is, when they're hitting pads, sometimes I'm like, fix your face, like relax, because I feel like it really fatigues you, squeezing like that.
Everything's resistant then, isn't it? So you're fighting against your own body, you're fighting against your own muscles, and that's going to cause these. And it is exhausting. Fighting is exhausting. But as I say, I do believe there are things that we can do. There are preparations we can put in place psychologically, where it doesn't have to be that different from sparring. And if you can cope with the cardio in sparring, there's no reason why we can't get to that stage if your mind's in the right place, where you see a change in cardio there.
So how do your sessions normally go with a fighter that you are working with, let's say a month out or 2 months out, and then when it gets really close to fight day, how did the sessions differ, and what are the conversations usually like?
So the earlier sessions, let's say we're 2 months out from a fight, that will be about trying to resolve these background issues I was talking about. So we'd be exploring, what's happened in previous fights, what issues have you noticed, what's been coming up, is there an anxiety issue, are there anger issues, are you struggling getting to training, are you training too much? And we go through a list of all the weaknesses that we believe that fighter has. And then within the hypnotherapy, we're looking to bring up the reasons behind those. So I believe there's a root cause for any irrational thought we have. So if there's an irrational fear of failure or fear of success that the person has, we need to work out where that came from. So we'll be exploring those thoughts within the session, like a therapy session, and then trying to resolve those memories of the past, whatever it is that's created that fear of failure, fear of success, that anxiety, whatever it might be. Then as we move forward and getting closer to the fight, we're dropping the more therapy-like work, and it's becoming much more fight visualization. So thinking through the fight, how we're going to deal with this scenario, how we work through worst-case scenarios, what combinations are we throwing, how do we respond in different situations, how do we visualize the finish, things like that. So we want the fighter to have gone through the fight in their mind so many times that on fight day it feels like I'm just going through it again. This is absolutely standard. This is normal. I know what I need to do. I can get myself in a flow state and fight through this battle and do it effectively, rather than, if you don't do any of this mental preparation, stepping into the cage and everything feeling new and uncomfortable, and that's when you have that level of resistance. So the visualizations break down that internal resistance of a new situation.
That sounds very specific, the type of work, and I mean, what combinations you're throwing and things like that. So I guess I have two things to follow up with. What if it goes the other way? Let's say you're visualizing it one specific way, or is it that you try to go through as many different situations and scenarios as possible?
So we're hitting as many scenarios as possible. So let's say it's an MMA match. So it's, okay, you're mounted, which is, close to worst case scenario. How are you defending? So they go through their different, so I need to do this, 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 this. Okay. And we need them staying calm through that process. So instead of when it happens in the fight, because fights, you're not going to always win in the first round by knockout straight away. You're gonna take punches and you're going to end up in bad positions. But what we want is when those bad positions come up, it being automatic that your brain just goes through, okay, well, the response to this position is X. And I know that because I've visualized that 100 times over, and I just go into automatic, and now I'm looking to sweep them to guard, whatever it might be. So, okay, someone's throwing a combination, they've landed a good leg kick, they've backed you up into the corner. What are you going to do? Okay, so cover up, sidestep, switch round, turn them into the corner, make the change. Those sorts of things. So the fighter's coming up with the answers. I'm not telling them what they should do. I'm saying, what do you do here? And then we're repeating the correct mental performance each time.
And it's like you're getting repetition in without taking the damage in the gym or in the actual fight.
Exactly. And the brain actually doesn't know the difference between a very vivid imagination and reality, because it's processing reality anyway. So if you're in that very deep state, I mean, there's been research done of people who visualize lifting weights, their real life strength goes up. So you can look on there's studies on that. But if you every night are, visualizing doing bench press over a month, if you then go and test your bench press, they've actually done tests to show that people start then being able to lift more weight than they could previously. And it's because the body starts adjusting. And it's the same thing with this. Your mind starts to see it as relatively real. It starts to know what to do in those situations. And when you're in the high pressure situation, instead of panic, it's been here perhaps 20 times before. It just goes into this is the next step. This is the next step. And that's what I'm aiming to do with fighters.
Do you worry at all about so if you're going over these negative, or not so much, I mean, I guess it's all in the mind, right? Whether you perceive it as negative or positive or whatever we're talking about. When you're going into these situations in a fight, which is putting yourself in these bad situations, do you feel like you're almost teaching the mind to go into those situations in a sense, or expecting to go into them, so they're a little bit more likely to happen? Do you know what I'm trying to say here?
As in, if you visualize something, does that mean it's then going to happen because that's something that's going to happen, because you've been processing through that? The way that we're trying to work through that is we're finding solutions to those situations which reduce the stress of those situations. The reality is, we're going into a fight, we're going to get hit. And yes, we could do visualizations where you're like the Matrix ninja and no punch ever hits you, and you knock them out with a 3-punch combination and you're a hero. And we could do that over and over again. But chances are that's not the reality of what a fight is like. We need to prepare for, okay, you've been hit, you're cut. How do you deal with this cut? Because it's not a case of, oh, you're cut, now give up. It's, how do we deal with the worst case scenario and accept that you're not dead, you can carry on fighting. What's the next best thing to do? So we're trying to create ways, we're trying to create sort of an automatic way for the fighter to jump into the next response correctly. And we have to be realistic and cover negative scenarios as well, because otherwise they will end up in a situation where, hey, Elliot, I've been visualizing, being Neo from the Matrix, and, why am I getting hit? It's just not a realistic, not a realistic way to prepare for anything.
If I were to come to you as a fighter, I'm sure this has happened in the past where a fighter, let's say, gets knocked out with a certain technique or a specific thing happens, and that's where that fear is instilled in them. Let's say for myself, I ran into this earlier on until I really came up with a solution. And that was when I would finish a lot of fights with my rear knee. So like whenever a guy is stepping in and hitting the rear knee to the liver or the solar plex and just kind of dropping them that way. You might have seen like Anderson Silva land down Stephan Bonner that knee to the chest. So I had 5 or 6 finishes really early in my career. And then after 2 fights where I got caught with an overhand simultaneously, I kind of stopped going away from my bread and butter that out of 7 fights, I finished 6 fighters. And I kind of started going away from it because I got caught with overhands. And although they might have not finished me, it got me in really bad situations that I haven't been in before. So then it became almost the fear of me throwing, my biggest weapon because of what the counter may be. So what would be an exercise that you would do, let's say with me or with a fighter that went through something like that?
So we'd be looking to first off remove like the emotion that you have around those memories. So we'd be going back to those memories and trying to separate the emotion from the reality. So it might be a very big emotional hit for you. You might be holding on to lots of emotion for it right now. And we look to talk through, resolve, and release whatever's still held on there, whether there's embarrassment, guilt, fear, whatever emotion you've attached to the prior memory. And then once we feel that we've released that, we would move forward to like positive visualization of, okay, we're going to visualize throwing that. What are we doing with our arms to make sure we're safe? And basically reprogramming the technique in a way that it's more effective and you're not leaving yourself open for that. Because there's probably a part of you that's concerned that you are leaving yourself open and something's going wrong because it's happened twice. And we need to make sure that you truly believe this is a safe technique for you to be using. Well, this one, I've seen this happen again in the MMA, is when there'll be a very strong kickboxer who'll stop throwing leg kicks because the guys get on the ground. And effectively, they end up, they've removed what could be their most powerful weapon against a wrestler who may not have eaten a lot of leg kicks in their career. And they're just stopping throwing this powerful weapon because of the fear of getting taken down. And you need to reach a stage where, okay, instead of that, what we're going to do is we're going to throw the leg kick at the end of punch combinations. So that would be the way around it in an MMA perspective. So you start visualizing a way you can use your technique, but perhaps more sensibly and safely than you've been using it before. And then again, go through those visualizations. So it's just something you add back to your armory again.
It makes a lot of sense. Now, with the whole mind, like we talk about the mind is 90% training, it's 10% physical, like fighting is, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, people neglect mindset training. It's, at least it seems to me. When you first started your martial arts journey to now, have you noticed a trend upwards to people paying a little bit more attention to the importance of this aspect of their training? And how have you seen that change happen?
Well, I definitely thought it was a weakness in me when I was fighting. One of the things I would notice is if I was fighting in a tournament, I'd feel good for the first fight, but I wouldn't be able to bring myself down in the breaks between fights, and I'd be sort of still burning energy through the whole break period and be exhausted by the second fight. And I couldn't really find any resources back then regarding it. There may have been some, but there certainly weren't a lot of resources. Now then, since 2012, everyone seemed relatively open to it that I spoke to. I think it helped. I think Georges St-Pierre had been working with mindset coaches during his strong run, and I think that helped a lot. And I think most fighters are aware that there is so much of a mental game to it. I don't think there are many people who argue, no, this is a purely physical sport. The mindset plays no part, because anyone who's fought competitively, even at the very lowest levels, feels that adrenaline and that stress, and usually the drop in performance when they go from the training room to their very first fight. So I think anyone with experience is relatively well accepting. There are definitely more people doing this now in the industry. I think there's a bigger demand for mindset coaching, and I sort of feel in life in general, there are just changes going on anyway in terms of how people are viewing mindset, how they're viewing personal development, how they're viewing meditation. And I think it's just, yes, it's happening more in fighting, but it's also happening in every other area. Like I said, with the topics I cover, I'm covering topics from esports to CEOs to stock market traders to UFC fighters. Everyone's looking for the edge, And I think everyone's quite aware that mindset is an edge that hasn't really been taken to its full course yet. There aren't many people who've really been trying to maximize this advantage in the same way that they have been with the traditional technique training.
So is that where you came up with the idea of Prime Mind, is to kind of be able to give people more of a way to access some mind coaching, essentially, that's usually a little bit tougher and more expensive to actually have to pay a coach for?
Yeah, I mean, the idea was to try and bring what I'm doing for specialists who are like, top athletes in the world, and instead bring it to the masses. So, instead of it being only professional fighters can be working with me, someone going for their first kickboxing tournament can prepare themselves mentally for it. And then what we do, like, we offer a lot of them for free in the app, so you can test them out. And what we do is we also offer all of the educational stuff for free, and that's going to be free forever. So exam stress, giving a presentation stress, working on studying and doing revision. So a lot of it was about trying to give back to younger people and help them understand how much more effective you can be if you have your mindset right before you start an activity, rather than just jumping right into the activity. Like the amount of value you get from your time if you have actually prepared yourself to do something properly, rather than just sitting there.
So talking about the general population, obviously it reaches a lot more people than just fighters and us.
Yeah.
So what are some of the most common things that you come across, not with fighters, but with just general population, maybe people even next to you, your family, your closest friends, acquaintances, business people?
I think the biggest things that's holding people back in general is the self-doubt. And I think almost everyone sees that in different activities. The voice in their head, the voice of the teacher telling them they'll never be good enough, or their parents saying, "What are you doing this for? It's stupid." Like all of that negative belief that stops people giving 100% of themselves to something that they could actually be very successful in. And I would say, as a general theme, that's probably the most costly thing that I see, is people being held back by negative thoughts, negative feelings, and then not really doing anything to work through those and understand where they came from and why they're not true. And that's where I see the biggest impact with the sessions as well, is if you can help someone let go of all of that, life can be very different for them.
Well, I think there's like so much, there's so many layers to where the mind game can take you, and how to go about doing it and optimizing your mind for various areas of life. But to find out more about yourself, about your app, about what it's all about, how do people, where should people be looking?
Well, I think you guys should have a link, but it's primemind.com. So that's where the app is. It's called Prime Mind. You can search for that on the app stores, or as I say, I think you guys will have a link that people can click through.
We have in the description of the video here on Facebook, and then on iTunes we'll provide it as well.
Perfect. Yeah. So yeah, if you just click through, and that will then you can find the app. As I say, there's loads of free content on there. So go through the free stuff. If you like it, you can get the premium package where you get all of the MP3s and audios to listen to. And yeah, I mean that's usually really the best way. And then if you wanted to work with me personally, just elliotroe.com, and then you can see the sort of work I do and see if that's right for you.
Boom. All right. Beautiful. Thank you so much for coming on. I'm sure it's going to be really helpful for the people to actually take action. Don't just listen to a podcast. Don't just think about how cool it would be if you worked on your mind. Actually try to work on your mind and do it.
It's free. Download it for free.
And let me tell you that consistency, number one thing. I mean, it's like with anything else. It's just like you're going to lose it if you don't go to the gym. It's the same thing if you don't work on it here. Like I did some of the courses, and I would do it 6-7 days in a row, and then I would skip, let's say 2-3 days, then do it again. It didn't have the same impact anymore. I couldn't connect to lesson number 7 when I didn't hear lesson number 6 for 5 days, because it's already at like a higher level and I skipped it. So yeah, consistency, get the free app, make sure you head on over there. Anything else you want to leave them with, Sean?
No, I was really looking forward to chatting with you a little bit more, the creator behind the Primed Mind app. And yeah, it's been cool to pick your brain. And yeah, I'm looking forward to just continue to see what the Prime Mind does. I mean, I'm a big supporter of it, man, because like I said, it's helped me in various areas of my life. I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a fighter, I'm a poker player, so it kind of hits all the things I do all in one. So yeah, I appreciate the work
we
that you
made the
do.
app for you.
There you go. Yeah, exactly. I feel that way. I really feel that way. But no, I really appreciate the work that you do, and I wish you the best of luck moving forward.
Awesome. Cheers, guys. Good luck in the ring, and yeah, just ever want to talk again, just drop me a line.